want to welcome you to our Community Life Hangout to try and answer some of the questions you may have about the ELCA Youth Gathering in 2015. And with us today are Donna and Heidi from our ELCA Gathering headquarters in Chicago. And my name is Charlie Roberts. I'm the Director for Community Life, Team Leader for Community Life. So, welcome.
We are not seeing the questions on our screen, Charlie, so I will relay them to you. First one is, what new things are in store for those attending the gathering in 2015?
Well, one of the significant changes that affects community life is the fact that the gathering community event that we have traditionally called the Dome, or the mass gathering, will be happening later in the evening. And so community life, as folks have come to know it, that happens in the evening after the mass event, mass gathering event, will be throughout the day. And so it's a much richer, larger opportunity for folks to participate in community life. And community life will really begin around 8 a.m. and continue right up until the mass gathering time. Lots of opportunities for young people to engage in community life. One of the ways that that'll happen is at the Cobo Center, which is the large convention center, which will become really the epicenter for activity in downtown Detroit, and there'll be a variety of community life activities throughout the day at that center. What's our next question, Andy?
That's the only question that's been asked so far. Of course, we do have a bit of a delay, just so folks are aware. There's about a 45-second delay, or up to 45-second delay, between the time that you ask a question and the time that your response will start to come through.
Let's go a little deeper with that particular question then, and let's talk about some of the specific things that folks can expect. We realize that congregational leaders have some concerns about what it means to be part of the larger community of the gathering while staying at a hotel that may not be within walking distance to the main gathering venues. And so we've worked really hard to address that concern. And in doing so, the community life idea of community life being a place where everyone is part of the community really began to emerge, so that the Cobo Center became our epicenter of activity. That doesn't mean that there won't be community life activities in hotel properties, but alongside of that, folks will be able to access community life in Cobo throughout the day. Community life events in hotels will continue, but on a different scale, where folks have come to know community life venues as being these large venues where a lot of activity is happening in one or two hotel properties. Each hotel property will have some programming that will be led by their community life team. One of the other significant changes is that registration for the actual gathering will happen at the hotel. And so when gathering participants and their congregational advisors arrive on Tuesday, Wednesday, or whenever they're actually registering for the gathering, they'll register in their hotels. And by doing that, they'll encounter their community life team right from the beginning of their experience. Get to know that team, get to know those individuals a little bit better, so that they can search them out throughout the gathering to help them with everything from communication to movement to how to access certain events and all the other kind of questions that come up as part of community life. Additionally, they'll also be able to access that team for areas of concern. I mean, we used to call it crisis intervention, but we don't like to use that terminology any longer. But we do realize that there are things that happen in the midst of the gathering where a congregational leader can really use the help of another adult, and searching out community life team members to help them with those kind of situations will continue to be part of what they can come to expect from the community life team.
Charlie, we got a question about wheelchair accessibility. How wheelchair accessible will some of the community life activities be at the Cobo Center? Thanks, Danielle, for your question.
Yes, thanks, Danielle. The Cobo Center has just been renovated. Donna could probably tell us the $1 million number that was attributed to that. But Cobo is a very beautiful facility, and it has been made even more accessible in this renovation. Cobo has two entrances on two different levels. Both are street level, but the riverfront entrance to Cobo is at one level, and coming in off of the main downtown is the second level, but both are street level, so it's easily accessible from a wheelchair. There are a number of elevators throughout that space, and so since that's our main space for community life, it's extremely accessible. Another large venue for community life will be the Marriott, which is part of the General Motors Renaissance Center, the GM Center they call it, or the RenCen. And the RenCen is a little more challenging, to be quite honest, although they do have very accessible space from elevators to all the different levels where community life will occur. Donna, you want to comment on that at all?
I think you did a very thorough job there, Charlie. Covered it very wonderfully. At the Marriott Renaissance Center that Charlie mentioned, that's where the pre-event, the Definitely Able Youth Leadership event will be. And so as part of that experience together in that pre-event, we want to take those young people into the venues, both Ford Field and Cobo Center, so they can become acclimated to it and figure out, the best way, how to access, the floors and just know how to navigate around a little bit. So, we're really trying to pay attention to that, in a city that has seen some challenges with their infrastructure. We're very blessed to be in a space that, as Charlie, as was mentioned, has just undergone, a major renovation, and beautifully done and easy to get around it.
Thanks, Donna.
We've got a couple other questions that have come in now. We have a question around what activities will be offered during the day for community life, and how will that affect rotation through Proclaim Community, Proclaim Story, and Proclaim Justice?
A great question.
That's from Mindy Tilburg.
Oh, super. What we know is this. We now know approximately the launch times for each of those Proclaim ministry days. And what we've tried to do in community life is to build programming around that, so that no matter what a congregational group is doing at any given time, they have access to community life. Because we realize that there will be congregational groups coming from hotels that could be 15 to 20 minutes from the downtown and being dropped off at the Cobo Center, we also realize that they're going to be spending a majority of their day there. And so we're looking to create different environments so that they can always have access to community life or gathering programming. So, for example, if your Proclaim Story Day starts a little bit later in the morning, there would be activities beginning as early as 8 o'clock in Cobo. There'll be morning worship experiences that'll include communion, Holy Communion. There'll be a morning venue that we haven't named yet that will be a live music stage, but more than just music, it'll be more like an interactive morning show. We've been equating it to like a Good Morning America or a Today Show, where young people can come, buy breakfast, sit down, enjoy a meal while they're being entertained from the stage by folks who are doing music, interviews, maybe showing highlights from the previous evening, talking live with participants, and we're working on a variety of things that we may do with that morning show. Additionally, there'll be 4 or 5 other music stages that will be available throughout Cobo with all different kinds of entertainment at each stage. And there'll be an outdoor lunch area that has local food vendors, food trucks, as well as access to the Kobo Center's food court. We are conscious of the fact that one of the big challenges for a congregational group is easy accessibility to meals. And so what we've tried to do is to design all of our programming with easy food accessibility, whether it's close to a food source or that we're bringing food into that source. And so our community life activities throughout the day will include all those things. The afternoon is what's unique, Mindy and other folks that are listening, and that is that we realized that with the shift of the mass gathering event to a later start time, that the middle of the afternoon, let's say a congregational group is coming back from its proclaiming justice experience, and they're being brought back to Kobo, and they've been out working in the field all day long, and they want a break and they want to cool off. They can go to a nice air-conditioned space where there would be like an area to relax and rest, even sleep perhaps. But also there'll be venues that are more high energy. So we wanted to be able to run the gamut from a very restful, quiet, peaceful space to a very upbeat, kind of cool, hype space that teenagers would enjoy. And so at the Rensen in the afternoon, probably starting around the 4 o'clock hour, there will be live concerts, music venues, interactive, fun experiences where kids can go and play, and all the variety of community life experiences that we've had in the past with some new ideas. And so from the time you step foot in the Kobo Center in the morning, throughout the day, there'll be these different interactive stages, there'll be these different music venues, there'll be always some kind of activities that young people can engage in. And the one other thing I would add to that is that throughout the day there will be venues where they can go for a prayerful time, or a labyrinth experience, or other kinds of worshipful experiences that are more devotional in nature. And so we've tried to meet all the different kinds of needs that we think young people and their adult advisors will be looking for.
Charlie, we've got some other questions that have been popping up while you've been talking. The next one up from Patty Erickson. Will there be some of the similar items that have composed community life in the past? Inflatables, concerts, etc. Will those be throughout the day or just closer to evening?
Those will probably be the concerts, as folks have come to know them, which are like the 90-minute venues featuring one particular act, will probably be closer to the evening. However, these live music venues I talked about, and there'll be 5 of them at least running throughout the day, will include live music, but they may or may not be the same band. And so whatever stage you go to, you'll get a different experience. For example, one of the music stages will be a baby grand piano. And during a portion of the day, we'll have a professional, quote-unquote, musician playing at that venue, but we will open that venue up to allow young people to play on the baby grand stage throughout the day. Folks will sign up for that. And that'll be one of the live music venues that we think will be pretty cool. It'll be more interactive. The things that folks have come to know, like dances and inflatable games, there will be venues with that opportunity as well. Some of them will be throughout the day. More often than not, more will be in the late afternoon hours before the dome opens or the mass gathering opens.
We got a question from Amanda Mitchell on Twitter. Since we all aren't going to be staying downtown, how is community life going to work? And I want to just jump in, Charlie, and say there were a number of folks I think that have joined us, because we're up to
Sure.
something around 25 live viewers, and we started with about 6. So I know you covered some of this already, but and then also to say that someone else chipped in that she loves the idea of early morning worship and communion.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate that. We really feel like that's an important element of our day together. But to Amanda's question, and I think we did cover some of this, but it's a good question. We realize that coming from a property that is not within walking distance can feel as if you're disconnected, and we want to get away from that feeling. We want to design community life so that no matter where you are in the day, you can feel connected to the gathering. And so we're designing elements that will even be part of your bus experience from your hotel to the first venue in the day. So let's say you're on your way to Proclaiming Community, which is the venue that'll be inside the Cobo Center that'll be running at similar times as some of the community life activities. We're not competing with each other. What we've tried to design is a community life experience that complements the Proclaim community experience, so that if the young people are going into what we've commonly known as the Interaction Center or the Proclaim Community Center, they would have an interactive learning experience that would be complemented by some of the activities that are happening in the rest of the Cobo Center and around the Cobo Center. For example, along with the live music stages we talked about and the live shows that we talked about, we've also got venues that are just outside of the Cobo Center, because we realize you may not want to spend your whole day inside Cobo, that will include local artisans, and that would be everything from paint to photography to music, who will have a venue where they can share their art, and the participants can come alongside of them and learn about their art, and also maybe even engage in some of their art. So that's a venue that'll be close to Cobo, probably just outside of Cobo. But along with that, all these activities we just covered, which are the afternoon activities at the Rensen, will make up this rich kind of, to borrow a term from our last gathering, gumbo of community life. And so we really hope that no congregational group will feel disconnected at any point.
Another community life question, this one from Bill Maines. Will the gathering be pulling community life people from the properties to run the CL activities at the Cobo Center, or will there be a dedicated team based there?
There will likely be a dedicated team at the Cobo Center because, and this is unique, each of the properties will have some element of programming, and that'll be unique. And Bill knows this because he's been part of this in the past, but we've had some community life hotels that didn't have any programming at all at some of our recent gatherings. And this year, there will be some programming element in every hotel. And so we really do need those teams to be available in the properties in the early morning hours and the late evening hours when congregational groups return to the properties. Now, the big challenge during the day is that there will be large hours of time that congregational groups will be away from hotel properties, and so how do we allow for those community life teams to engage in the gathering is one of the things we're working on right
now. Okay, we've also got a question, another one from Danielle Vogel, about what type of community life activities are going to be offered during Dale.
That's a great question that I don't have the answer to. The Dale team is working on that as we speak, and at some point we'll be working together on that, I imagine, but that would be a better question for the Dale team leader.
And from what I'm seeing, I think that is all of our current questions. I'm sure that as Charlie has talked, there have been some more that have surfaced, but that so far answers the ones that have been posted online or tweeted to us.
Yeah, if there's any specific clarifying questions, we'll try to address those as well.
We'll just give folks a few minutes to see if they have any other questions. Donna, did you want to, or Heidi or Natalie, did you want to jump in and say anything?
This is Donna, and I would just like to say that all of the teams have been working very hard and very well together to make it possible so that all of our congregations, wherever they may be, come together. Everybody comes together in the downtown area for the whole day, and it just it's just amazing to see the work that's been done. We have more hotels this time than at any other time in the past because there are many properties that are clustered together, but they may have smaller room block, and we're devising the different routes to shuttle folks. And I got to say, with the programming on the bus and all the programming downtown, once congregations arrive and they start their 5-day adventure in Detroit, it's just going to be amazing.
Charlie, we had another question come in about properties. How many are going to be used for community life, and are any of the outlying properties, especially in the afternoon, are any outlying properties going to have community life, especially in the afternoon, or are the efforts focused downtown? And that's another one from Minnie Buster Tilburg.
Yeah, that's a great question. As of right now, the way that all of that will work is that we anticipate that the congregational groups that come from any property will be converging on the downtown and spending most of their day downtown. That's not to suggest that there won't be some congregational groups that want to go back to their properties throughout the day. The way that we're currently devising the system is that we will shuttle congregational groups from their properties in the morning to the Cobo Center or to the venue where they'll be launching for their community, for their Proclaiming Justice Day. And so all congregational groups will be arriving in downtown in the morning hours. And then we'll be shuttling congregational groups back to their properties in the evening following the mass gathering event. And as a result of that, we don't anticipate doing afternoon programming in any properties except properties that are easily accessible within walking distance to Cobo or to Ford Field, because we don't anticipate congregational groups being in those properties. Now, that doesn't suggest that some congregational groups may not go back, but we feel for the percentage that would be going back to properties in the middle of the day for any reason, that we don't really have enough need in properties to do any kind of programming in the afternoons beyond the properties that are within walking distance to the two major venues. And let me just share a little deeper behind that. As you just heard Donna suggest, we know for a fact that there are more properties in Detroit than we've traditionally had at any previous gathering, which means the room blocks are much smaller. What congregational groups can anticipate is that they're going to be in a property that has fewer gathering participants than what they've been accustomed to. Now, there's some real positives in that. The delay on elevators to go to upper floors, the fact that you won't have to wait as long to get meals. There's a lot of upside to that. But the fact is, you may be in a property where there's 200 to 400 participants as opposed to 2,000 to 4,000 participants. And with a property size like that, to try to do programmatic pieces in the afternoons, when we can't predict how many people would actually be returning to that property, is really not it's probably not a good use of gathering dollars and or gathering volunteer time. Whereas if we can create venues that folks can get to from the downtown venues more readily, we think that it'll really be a much richer experience for those participants. But if you do want to go back to your property in the afternoon and jump in the pool, man, I think that's a great idea. we just can't guarantee to be programming there. Not at that time of the day, anyway.
And I think you also need to recognize the fact that that could also mean an extra hour to an hour and a half or even more of sitting on a bus to get back and forth to your property from the downtown area.
That's accurate, especially that time of day.
Yeah. Just a quick question, one more from Danielle about peanut-free areas. Are we paying? We're going to have allergen-free areas?
That's not a bridge we've crossed yet. I know that the operations team takes that seriously, and we will be working with Bruce. I can certainly bring that up, and I'd be happy to. I don't know that we will, but we can certainly have that discussion.
All right, another one here. Advice for first-time groups coming to the gathering from Nicole D'Onofrio.
Wow. I think there's a lot of good things. In fact, Don and Heidi may want to weigh in on this one as well. But for me, it's expect the unexpected, and I mean that in two ways. One is that you can plan very, very well, and you should. And the gathering provides lots of resources to do good planning, to go to the gathering. But expect that some of those things will not quite go as planned, and that is that there's sometimes things that can happen that you're at your hotel or in your travels to and from a venue that you can't expect, and some of that is just being patient and preparing your young people to be patient. But the other part of that for me is this. Every time I've taken a young person or a volunteer adult to a gathering, they have come back with a very different experience than what they expected. And normally it's a much richer, deeper, more faithful experience than what they expected. So expect the unexpected in the sense that your young people may be transformed in ways that we can't begin to predict at this point. And that's really the gift of the Holy Spirit at work. Don or Heidi, do you want to comment on that one?
Well, I would just like to add, for a first-time congregation, I would just like to stress the importance of planning your trip so that you arrive in plenty of time to either get downtown for the opening session or to come in a day ahead to kind of acclimate yourself to the area. As Charlie mentioned, the community life staff in each property will have, they will be checking all the congregations in. You will get your wristbands, which give you access to all of the gathering venues during the 5-day event. So I think just allowing yourself plenty of time to come in, look around, see what's there, and just kind of settle in for a little bit so you're not rushed in so many ways on that opening night.
Does anybody else there from Chicago want to weigh in?
They want you to. Come on, Heidi.
All right.
Sure.
Hi, I also want to say that we've found over the years that it's very important, as far as the outcome is concerned, to actually access and do the materials that we provide. There will be 6 months worth of curriculum that will be ready to go if you want to start in January. And we've been very strategic in the ways that we have put that material together, or are putting that material together, that will help prepare you for the experience that you'll have in Detroit. There's also materials that we will provide via our website and Facebook that can help you even further ahead, if you haven't already chosen the adult leaders that will be taking the young people, accompanying the young people to Detroit. They are really key in helping to set the tone for how new experiences can be welcomed as a group. It's really easy for a group to get anxious and to kind of have that group angst. But there's some very specific skills from people who have successfully taken large groups to the gathering before that they'll teach you how to kind of refocus your group if anxiety comes up. That's just an example of some things that we will provide with our resources.
I just want to jump in and say, if you don't know who those people are, the first one to speak was Donna Weigel, and the second was Heidi Hagstrom, the gathering directors, and then the one who just waved is Natalie Young, administrative assistant. There's Natalie back again. She is tweeting for us there. So. And just in case you're wondering, I'm Andy Arnold, and I'll put myself on screen for 1 second, and then we're going to go back to Charlie. Actually, no, I'll take this question. I know that in the past the Red Cross and Locks of Love were available for those wishing to donate blood and their hair. Will they be involved again? We're not exactly sure which agencies will be involved, but we have made a commitment that we will have an agency involved for donating hair, so please do start growing your hair out now if that is something you're interested in doing, because it's going to take you from about now till then to have enough hair to be worth donating. Charlie, we had a question raised from Mindy Buster Tilburg again. And so no community life like in previous years after the Dome each night. So I'm going to bring you back up on screen.
Thanks, Andy. To Mindy's question, the challenge is this. We don't know when you can expect to be back at hotels in the evening following the mass gathering, because the time from the time we dismiss from the dome or from Ford Field and get folks loaded on buses and get them back to the hotels, it could vary in times. And so we will have programming happening in properties based on that particular equation. So, for example, Mindy, you could go back and your community life team may have just a time where they can hang out with young people, do some music, maybe play some games, have some conversation, maybe have some pool time. And each property will have their own opportunity to create that in that property. Now, there may be some properties where you get back and it'll be time just to do a final 15 and maybe check in with your congregational group and be off to bed. But that'll really depend on the congregational advisor and each property. So that's why I suggested earlier that programming will be available in each property, just not in the same way that you've been used to. For example, we're not going to have a large-scale dance in any one given property beginning at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. But you might have the opportunity to go back and have some interaction with young people from other parts of the country that are staying in your property as well. And so I don't want to say there's no programming, because there is, but I also don't want to suggest that it's the same kind of programming we've had in the past. The Final 15 is an element that will continue that has been part of gatherings in the past, and we anticipate that the Final 15 could happen in any number of venues. It could be happening on buses on the way back to properties. It could be happening in properties. It could be happening in a place where a congregation is eating post gathering, mass gathering event. But really, that's one of those elements that we know will continue in every venue, we hope, every evening.
Question for the gathering staff there in Chicago from David Hively. Is there a backup plan for people whose Justice Day gets rained out? My youth were disappointed in New Orleans that they were rained out and only got to watch a video instead of serve. So do we have an answer for that yet, or is that something that's still in process? Donna? Heidi?
Yeah, Heidi's
Yes.
nodding yes.
Yes, we are well aware of the need for that because of what happened with the rain in New Orleans. I just can't say exactly what that's going to be at this point, but the team is planning for that contingency.
Great, thank you. This one's back to you, Charlie. As a Gathering Synod coordinator, I've had a couple of pastors who would like to help in a pastoral role with community life. Do I put them in touch with you, Charlie, or do they fill out a Gathering volunteer application? What's their best option? And that's a question from Patty Erickson.
The best option is to go online and to register as a community life volunteer. And I have not checked that today, but as far as I know, I think we still have some spots available, and we would love more pastors. That is one of those roles that becomes critical to our life together, especially when we have folks spread out like we do in so many different properties. And so please, if there's pastors who are interested, send them to the community life volunteer process. Donna, or Natalie, am I fair in saying that we still have a couple spots available? Has anyone checked that recently?
We might have a few. We have some cleaning up of the database to do, but we're pretty full, I believe, with that opportunity. We do need servant companion applicant.
But then also, just remembering that community life teams depend on the number of hotels. We're still in the process of contracting with a couple others, so that we may need to increase that just based on volume.
So it might be fair to say that we should still have pastors apply because we also need, more pastors maybe because as we bring more hotels on. Another question for the community life people in properties: will there be transportation for them to go and return after the groups leave for the day and before the groups return for the last event? Are there ways community life people can travel during the day when they're not needed at their properties? And that's from Bill Maines. Charlie?
The answer to the question is yes. We want to make it available for community life folks to be able to leave their properties soon after all the congregational groups have departed in the morning and to be part of the community of the gathering. And so we're working on that. As to the specifics around how they'll get to and from, that has not been determined yet, but it is a priority for us to help them be able to be part of the gathering community during the day, because we realize there will be very little happening in hotel properties between about 9 o'clock in the morning and about 9 o'clock in the evening. So that's definitely a priority for us. And I don't know if yeah, I just would say it's a priority. We're working really hard on that.
Also, just a +1 on the idea of ending the day programming at the Dome, plus Final 15, but of not having a huge community life thing. So Mindy's agreeing that's a great idea. Let's see. I think we are yet again through all of the questions that I have seen on the questions and answers, and also on the Twitter account. So we'll wait a couple seconds to see. Donna or Heidi or Natalie, do you have anything you want to add from Chicago? I'll switch back to you.
Natalie's whispering, so we have to see what she wants.
She's saying, I don't want to be on camera.
Yeah.
Okay, then we won't put Natalie on camera. But Natalie, for those of you that don't know, often manages and pays attention to our social media, and especially our Facebook page, so that's why we're asking her. We have a question from Mindy. What are you most excited about for community life? Charlie, Heidi, Donna, etc.
Wow, I'm excited because community life has expanded so dramatically, and really we have an opportunity to be a big part of the programmatic experience for many participants. And for me, that's a challenge. And I think for our team, it really means an opportunity to engage young people in a variety of new ways. And so for me, that's the biggest plus. If there is one for us, it's a little more work. And Heidi and I had a nice discussion at a recent planning team meeting where she actually asked me, are you guys ready to do this? And I said, yeah, I think we are. But it is exciting, and it allows us to engage young people in a variety of new ways, and so that hopefully will enhance their experience at the gathering. Heidi or Donna?
Well, I would like to say that for me, having community life teams handle the check-in, and that's the on-site, what used to be registration, where everybody would come down to the convention center, and it was a whole process where you had to stand in line and get everything checked in. And this time it's distributed throughout. You go to the hotel you're assigned to. That team already has your information. They've got your wristbands. And I think, Charlie, I think you mentioned, once we do housing assignments, the teams in each hotel will know the congregations that are assigned there, so they'll have the opportunity to start the communications with those congregations and kind of get to know each other. And I think it will help foster a much more intimate kind of relationship with everybody, congregations, the young people, the leaders, the community life teams, to make the experience best all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought of something. I'm just coming back from one of several focus group meetings that the Dome Creative team, that's the team that does the programming, will be doing the programming in Ford Field. They have several focus groups that they host young people and to hear who they want to hear from, to hear how they understand the thematic emphases that we have for the gathering, so that we can articulate the gospel in a way that will touch the hearts of young people in a language that they use. And what was clear to me in this meeting as I listened to the young people is that they just yearn to be together with one another. They said over and over they wanted to hear the stories of their peers from the main stage of the gathering. And so as I'm listening to us now, I'm extrapolating that to community life and thinking what a blessing it is that we have this opportunity to change up what we've done in the past. And I think it's going to multiply the opportunities for young people to just hang out with each other and touch base with one another, and also increase the touch points that the adults, the caring adults that are there at the gathering have with young people. I think it's going to be less of a mass group experience with community life and more of a one-on-one kind of experience of community life.
I really want to applaud that. Heidi's really hit the nail on the head. All of our community life gathering venues allow us to have this opportunity for young people to engage with one another. And we know that in relationship is where we experience Christ in a manifest way. And so we want young people to be able to share their stories with each other and to be able to encounter each other on one-to-one basis. And we know that these kind of smaller venues that have an opportunity for young people to chat and hang out and throw a disc around or whatever it happens to be allows them to engage in ways that they may not otherwise get. And what's nice is it's not only going to be restricted to the hotel. And so alongside of the people that they might meet in their property in the evenings or in the mornings, which has traditionally been the community life venue, this allows them to meet someone at a morning community life venue. Maybe it's worship, maybe it's a music stage, and then someone different at lunchtime, and maybe someone different in the afternoon hours. And so all this richness of experience should really enhance the experience. And so I want to thank Heidi for creating that opportunity for us and allowing us to be creative in the midst of that.
Got a question from Danielle about will there be an app or a way for kids to know what's in the Kobo and the Rensen at a given time? And I'll just take that one.
Nice.
I'm not sure exactly how specifically we'll be able to provide that kind of information, Danielle, but we certainly are planning on having a gathering app and also having either a guide map or some other smaller form factor thing that folks can carry around with them and have at all times that will be handed out to all gathering participants, youth and adult, so that they can have some sense. Plus we'll have the signs, the digital signage and the video screens and those kinds of things that'll help people find what they would like to find and where that activity is. Charlie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, we will of course have our community life teams equipped to be able to help congregations find particular venues and things that they're able to do during the day. But alongside of that, we do hope to have as much as possible of this material in a digital format that folks can access from personal electronic devices as much as possible. And that may include and will include, if we're able to do it, our final 15 and something new that we're excited about, and that is our first 15. We've been talking at length about what it means to start our day in prayer and scripture and devotions, and really with this travel experience that every congregational group will get in the morning to go from their hotel venue to the community venue for the day. We really think that a first 15 will be a new outlet where we can engage folks in that kind of worship, prayerful experience first thing in the morning as well.
Mindy's wondering if there's going to be a Google Hangout for transportation, and I think our plan is to have these kinds of Google Hangouts, maybe not quite monthly, but every so often to give folks a chance to answer and get their questions asked. And the other thing we want you to be sure and know about these is that they will be live, or I mean after they are streamed live, they will be available to watch via YouTube, and so we'll also post those links. So if you know of someone who didn't get to join this conversation directly, but would appreciate seeing some of these answers, then make sure you let them know that they can watch the archived version of it as well. Tara Ulrich writes, I love that idea. It's truly about formation, not so much information. I applaud where you are headed here. Smiley face.
Great.
Mindy loves the registration in hotels and thinks that's going to work great. Donna, can you clarify, is Community Life responsible for actual registration, or will we be the welcoming hospitality people working around the actual registrars? So I'll switch the camera back to you.
Okay, could you repeat that? I'm not.
Sure. Bill Maines is wondering, is Community Life responsible for actual registration, or will Community Life teams be the welcoming hospitality people working around the actual registrars?
Okay. I would say Community Life teams in hotels will not be responsible for registration. Remember, congregations will have already registered and sent their payments. Community Life teams will have each congregation's wristbands. And so they'll be able, when congregations arrive, be it on Tuesday or Wednesday of the gathering week, they will stop at the Community Life desk or area or part of the hotel and meet the team and get their wristbands. I don't know, Charlie, do you want to talk about this a little more, or have you had the opportunity to really, I mean, they're not responsible for the registration, but they will be responsible for greeting and making sure the congregations get their wristbands.
And I think one other thing we're planning on doing, sorry, Charlie, didn't mean to jump on you there.
Okay.
I just wanted to say one other thing we're going to plan on doing is having Donna and other more highly trained people to deal with registration issues available on speed dial or on a Google Hangout or something like that to all of the people in all the hotels, so that they're able to quickly respond to, questions and the complicating kinds of factors that always tend to crop up when we're trying to check in our 40,000 some odd folks. So, Charlie,
it's a both and I sense I have an idea where this is coming from for Bill. What I don't want to do is send a panic through anybody who's volunteered to be a Community Life volunteer at this moment. But the reality is that checking folks in at the properties makes not only more sense logistically for Detroit, but also enhances the relationship between the Community Life team and the participants, particularly the adult leaders. And so, as Don is suggesting, registration really has changed over the last 2 or 3 gatherings. And there was a time where we collected, for example, the balance due for registrations at the gathering registration site. We don't do that any longer. That's paid in advance. And so really the registration process has been simplified in many ways. And so I don't want I don't want Community Life volunteers to be too nervous about this. We're going to be working very closely with them to equip them with all that they need to do this well. But they will be responsible for distributing the wristbands and for checking folks in. And as Andy has suggested, we will make it as accessible as possible for them on those days to be able to reach out to both our Community Life planning team as well as the gathering staff, and make it as easy as possible for them to do this on site. I think the other thing that I want Bill and others to hear, as well as the congregational leaders, is that once again, these are going to be smaller venues. You're not going to be registering necessarily 200 to 2,500 young people in every venue. You will be mostly registering a smaller group, somewhere in the 200 to 400 range, I would say, on average. And so I really want folks to hear this not as a hurdle or as a roadblock or even a stumbling block, but more as an opportunity to really engage.
And very well said, Charlie. And it is just the wristbands. Congregations get their backpacks and Bibles at Ford Field on the first night, and any other printed material. So it's strictly wristbands. And if you have 200 people at your property, chances are that might be 10 congregational groups.
Danielle is expressing her appreciation for this hangout. Courtney Geibert jumped in and say, "Hooray for First 15. What a great way to prepare and excite youth for the day." Mindy wonders why Charlie's wearing layers, because it's 100 degrees in Kansas. So who knows?
I'm
He's
in an
actually wearing
air-conditioned
layers, Mindy,
room.
because we realized white on a white background made him look like a disembodied head floating there on the screen. All right. Well, that's all the questions that seem to have popped up. And Charlie, I wonder if maybe you want to just give one more quick recap of just the fundamental shift in community life, if you will, and then I think we could probably wrap it up.
Yep. Thanks, Andy. First, a really hearty thank you to Andy and the communications media team for hosting our Google Hangout today. I really do appreciate that and the opportunity to chat with all of you. And let me just say this, community life really has evolved a lot over the years that I've been involved with gatherings, and we're very excited about the fact that we are now becoming, alongside of proclaiming community, a venue that young people can access throughout the day. And so we take that responsibility very seriously and want to create venues where young people will feel like they are immersed in the gathering community. We realize community happens everywhere young people go, whether or not it has the community life label or not. It happens in restaurants, it happens on street corners, it happens in all kinds of venues at a gathering. But what we want to do is to take that and go a step further, and young people the opportunity to walk alongside, to work one-on-one with their peers, and to engage them in a variety of ways, and to also give them exposure to all the kind of fun and unique experiences that they've had in the past and more. And so we will work very hard to make community life a richer part of the gathering, and a part of the gathering that runs pretty much all day long. So.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for your participation. Tara, I will pass your question along. Tara has raised a question for the gathering team about some specifics that I think aren't I'll pass along to the gathering staff to address, because I don't think they would be as helpful to everyone. Thanks everyone for your participation. Charlie, you want to wave goodbye, and then I'll switch the camera over to Chicago and they can wave goodbye. And you guys can all wave goodbye there in Chicago. And thanks to Paul Amlin also for his help in facilitating this in Chicago. Thanks to you for joining us. And as I said, watch the Facebook page and the G News for upcoming times that we will have more Hangouts on other issues. And you feel welcome to post on Facebook if you'd like to see one about something, and we can see if we're able to respond to that. Thanks all for your participation, and have a great day.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.